Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to another review. 2 years ago, Dapol bought us their D-Class locomotive, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous model. Now though, 2 years on, we have the sequel. Today's locomotive is the D-Class that you can see behind me after it had been rebuilt to feature a new firebox and a new boiler. As well as making the locomotives more powerful, this rebuild also completely changed their appearance. And so while today's model may share some components with the D-Class, I'm thinking maybe the chassis will be the same, we'll find out. I'm still considering it an all-new model because it doesn't look anything like the D-Class. So today's loco is brand new, just released, and it is this, the SECR D1 locomotive by Dapol. And this loco is exclusive to rails, which means that it is quite a bit more expensive than you'd expect a brand new Dapol loco to be. And that's because rails seems to mark up their prices, well, as much as they possibly can by the looks of it. So the price for this is £199.95. Compare that with another new Dapol loco, the Manor Class, and you can see that that is some £50 cheaper at £151.97. However, it must be said at least the price of the D1 is no more expensive than the D-Class of 2 years ago. In fact, this is 4p cheaper, if I'm not much mistaken, because the D-Class was £199.99 and this is £199.95. So if you want to save 4p, sorry, this is the one for you. Anyway, I'm really curious to see this model because looking at the photos, the loco looks very unusual indeed. A complete contrast with the D-Class really, which was the epitome of elegance, whereas the D1 looks like a much more business-like design, designed to get the job done rather than to just look nice doing it. So let's get this out, let's see what this is like, and let's see whether it's worth the money. Let's get started. So, like all of the Rails exclusives I've looked at, this has some great packaging. Very snazzy looking line drawing, which shows you what the loco looks like without giving away details on the livery and what the actual model looks like, which I actually like because then it keeps it a surprise. Let me show you the end of the box then. So the version I have is 4S-028-001. It is the D1 735 in the SECR Wartime Grey. And it had to be the grey for me. There's quite a few different liveries to choose from, so check them out if you want to, but for me it had to be the grey. And it's quite interesting because I thought the SECR grey was a freight livery, and yet here we have a passenger loco. Well, the D-Class was definitely a passenger loco, I assume this was as well, but painted grey. Maybe though the passenger locos were painted grey during the war, I'm not sure, but the important thing is I liked the look of the grey and that's what I've gone for, so we're going to see that. Nothing much else to see on the box, so I think for the first time I'm going to open this up and have my first actual look at this loco in the flesh. I've only ever seen this model in photos and not sort of super close-up photos at that, so most of this loco should be a complete surprise. Struggling a little bit here, okay. So like I say, quality packaging, sturdy cardboard box, lots of foam on the inside, very good to see. Okay, owner's manual then, which as always from Dapol are very well produced. Let's have a look. So, a history of the Mansell D1 class, pause and read that if you'd like to. Here's the model specification. So this is great to see right off the bat, a die-cast metal chassis and boiler. Hopefully then the model will have some decent weight to it. Die-cast wheels, motion and connecting rods. It can handle second radius curves, which is good. It has sprung buffers. It's got loco and tender pickups, brass bearings, I like that quality feature, toolless DCC decoder and speaker fitting. We'll see if we actually get the tool provided this time. You've got the push together loco and tender, which I will show you later on, and skipping down it also has the firebox flicker effect. So it's a very feature-packed loco from Dapol, as they all are these days. Maintenance, as you can see, looks to be reasonably straightforward. Remove the base keeper plate for lubrication, which is good. Fitting the accessories, yeah, complete with diagrams, that's very useful. Couplings, footplate doors, you've got those that look like they clip in place, which is a very neat and tidy solution. How awesome is that? Normally you have to glue those on. But no, these clip. That is great. Good old Dapol. Installing the decoder, this appears to work exactly as it does on Dapol's other locos. So remove the smoke box door, pull out the drawer, then you've got access to the DCC socket and also a place to put your speaker. And it talks about speaker installation. Optional speaker in the tender, so yeah, you can add an additional speaker if you want to, give you that better sound. Some of the sound functions here, points to consider, spare parts, warranty, a truly all-encompassing owner's manual there, very good. But time to look at the loco. Like I say, not seen one of these in the flesh yet, so here we go. Oh, pretty much shrouded in the packaging there, but I can see a bit of that grey shining through, and it looks awesome. I can also see the red of the valve gear between the frames shining through too, which I think is going to look awesome. So let's pull this out and see what we actually get in the box. All right, yep, lots of foam to protect it. And I have seen an accessories bag in the top, so let's open this up and let's pull that out. It looks as though we do have the DCC fitting tool included this time, which is nice because on the last Dapol loco I looked at, this part was promised but not provided. And you can see we've got a few other bits as well. No couplings, so they must be on the model already. We've got some guard irons by the looks of it and some painted vacuum pipes. That's pretty much it. No cab doors, so maybe this version doesn't have them, or they're pre-fitted. We'll find out. Right, let's open this up then, take our first look. What is the finish like? Usually pretty good from Dapol these days. So let's see what this one's like. Oh, yes. Ooh, awesome. Yeah, look at that. A gorgeous satin finish, possibly the best finish I've got on a grey loco. The Hornby Hush Hush was good actually, but yeah, this one looks slightly better and totally different. This does not look anything like the D-Class, which is why I say, you know, more or less completely new loco. So loco and tender are not coupled because they're so easy to put together and take apart. So let's start with a look at the tender. And even this looks completely different from the D-Class tender. So it makes sense that this took 2 years to arrive. But look at the decoration on this. Fantastic finish, such crisp printing, really, really nicely put together. And looking underneath, yeah, we can see the wheels do have pickups on their flanges, which is an interesting design. And they are a little bit stiff as a result, but that's fair enough. We've got a proper kinematic coupling on the tender there, and also a pivoting loco to tender drawbar connection too. So that looks great. I'll show you more of that in a moment. Let's have a look at the loco then, which clearly does have the die-cast boiler there, and also the firebox by the feel of it. All right, let's lift this up, take a close look. All right, so there it is, the D1 locomotive. And yeah, I mean, it's not light or anything, but it also doesn't strike me as being particularly heavy, but it is quite a nimble looking loco, isn't it? A lot of space underneath the boiler, quite a slim boiler at that, open cab and such. The smoke box is made of plastic, but that makes perfect sense because if you think about it, too much weight at the front would just take weight off those driving wheels and onto the bogie. And I assume that's why the footplate has not been made of metal either. Yeah, that's just plastic as well, although it does look straight, which is good. Yeah, I do like the quality feel though of the die-cast boiler and firebox. That is really, really good to see. And if I hold the loco and tender together, in fact, it's so easy to couple these that I'm going to do it in my hands here. There you go, snap together and they are done. Look how nice and close they couple as well. It's really good to see. So the D1, quite an expensive model. Yeah, it's a £200 locomotive. Is it? Well, we'll find out in just a second when I show you all of the details up close. For now though, let's have a little bit more background on the D1 in real life. The SECR Class D1 started life on the SECR as the D-Class from 1901. This was a 440 tender engine introduced at the turn of the 20th century to the design of Harry Wainwright. The first of 51 engines entered service in 1901, and despite their elegant and very decorative aesthetic, the locomotives proved to be efficient, capable and powerful. By 1913 though, there was a demand for even more powerful locomotives to operate on the Kent coastline, and so Richard Mansell rebuilt 21 of the locomotives with larger boilers, Belpaire fireboxes and a longer cylinder travel, and reclassified these as the D1. They worked around the London/Kent area for many years, but had been relegated to more secondary duties by the 1930s in the wake of more modern steam designs. By nationalisation, 28 remained in service, but they were gradually withdrawn until the final example was retired in 1961. While one example of the D-Class has been preserved, no D1 locomotive survived into preservation. So there it is, up close and personal for you, the brand new Dapol D1, and I have to say I am mightily impressed by this loco. I think this engine is the most like a £200 engine that I have ever purchased from Rails, which is really good to see. Do I wish this was a general release Dapol loco? Well, sure, yeah, we might have saved a lot of money if that was the case, but at the end of the day it is a superb model and I am very, very pleased with it. I think the D-Class is objectively a more elegant and beautiful locomotive, but I have to say I find myself preferring this model. I do tend to lean towards the more business-like, austerity type locomotives, but also I think this model is the higher quality one. The build quality is much higher, it's been better put together, and I think it's actually a more complex loco as well, perhaps not in terms of livery, but certainly in terms of the details. It's also a heavier loco by quite an amount. This weighs in at 255 grams, whereas the D-Class weighed in at 232 grams. So this is over 20 grams heavier, which is quite a lot in 00 scale, and as a result this loco has no traction tyres fitted to it. I was always a little bit annoyed by the D-Class because here we have a 200-pound locomotive that was so light that it needed rubber tyres on its wheels just to be able to haul stuff. This is quite a bit heavier and therefore it doesn't have the tyres. I think that's a good thing. With the D-Class though, we had the option to fit rubber traction tyres or have no traction tyres at all. With this one though, you don't have that option. There are no traction tyres supplied. So yes, you lose a little bit of choice with this version of the model, but then again, I don't really care because given the choice, this is what I would take. I would take a heavier loco without traction tyres any day, and that's what we've got, which is good to see. It is, however, considerably lighter than the Dapol Manor Class by about 100 grams. The Manor Class weighs in at 352 grams, so you do get a lot more loco for your money when you buy a general release Dapol loco, but then again, you don't buy Rails exclusives for the value for money. I think that's certainly fair to say. It's possibly even an understatement. You buy them because they are unusual prototypes that you can't get anywhere else, and that definitely is true for this loco. So let's take a look at some of its features then. The livery shouldn't take too long to talk about because it is simple, but it has been done extremely well. The grey looks gorgeous. I love grey liveries and I really like this one. The finish on it is fantastic as well. Very high quality satin finish on this, which looks excellent. You've got the SECR printing on the side of the cab, which also looks good, and the finely painted buffer beams with the white lettering on those, and that matches of course the large numbers on the tender very, very nicely. The loco also has a splash of colour here and there, such as these copper and brass coloured parts, which look incredible. I think in the past I've criticised some of Dapol's locos for having these parts look a little bit plasticky. Up close they don't look absolutely amazing, but they do look a lot more metallic than I've seen from Dapol in the past, which is great. You've also got the black painted cab roof and smoke box, both of which stand out very nicely. And then my favourite feature is the red painted valve gear, which is very noticeable on this loco. The boiler seems to sit a lot higher on this than it did on the D-Class, and therefore they would not have gotten away with just a flat blank space here, as some manufacturers often try to do. So to see proper valve gear modelled here is really good to see, and it is quite complex as well. Speaking of the complexity of the loco, I think it is quite a bit more complex than the D-Class. All of this pipework here is separately fitted. It's not just part of the moulding. That is absolutely fantastic to see, and this side of the model is not the most complex. If I show the other side, you can see even more going on. You've got what I assume is a Westinghouse pump to operate the brakes, a very, very complex piece, and down below the running plate you can see the apparatus there continues to the actual brake rigging. Loads of pipe work, separately fitted handrails as you can see, and up on top you've got a very nice whistle assembly which is separately fitted, and also the safety valve assembly too, which has some good definition on it. Around the front we do have the coupling pre-fitted as well as proper metal sprung buffers. Very high quality touch there, I like that. Coupling hook pre-fitted, but this loco comes with no couplings to fit. I think that's quite an omission for £200. You know, this loco really has to have all the possible features at this price, and it pretty much does, but that is one that is missing. The vacuum pipe is pre-fitted, particularly nicely made piece, that nice and straight as well, and that is a theme with this loco. Build quality incredibly high. Dapol have come a long way since the days of the Terriers, which in my experience had a lot of quality issues. This one, very, very few indeed. The smoke box door is very unusual, isn't it? Completely different from the original D-Class. Quite feature-free really, except for the handrail, which is separately fitted to the front. And then of course we have got the handrail which stretches across the firebox, boiler and smoke box as well. The wheels look excellent on this loco. They've got the brake rigging attached to them, and they've got the axles nicely disguised, which looks great. The cast coupling rods also look good and fine, which I like a lot. And here's a look at the front bogie wheels, and even these have a great finish on them. I think it said they were cast wheels, and if so, they look really, really good. The cab area is particularly impressive as always with Dapol. We've got some very fine and realistic looking glazing, which is good. Quite a few separately fitted handrails around the outside of the cab, and then inside you've got a truly marvellous level of detail. Lots of separately fitted parts, separate components, handles, turning wheels. The gauges have all been picked out, and you can see the dials and the numbers and such on the gauges. Very, very impressive, even down to the cream painting on the back of the cab and the realistic looking floor. And of course this is without seeing it with the lighting. We do have the firebox flicker effect on this loco too, so the cab truly is very, very feature packed. I have said that the quality is incredibly high, but there are just two things that I don't like about this. First of all, you can see there's a split in the boiler here where the upper part is the body and the lower part is the chassis block. That's presumably to accommodate the motor or something like that. It is quite conspicuous from the outside of the model though, more so than on the D-Class. One quality problem as well. The handrail over on the other side is very poor indeed. It looks as though the paint was sort of touched before it was dried and it was completely messed up. I'm not sure how that passed quality control, but that is the only issue with this. Everything else is perfectly assembled. The running plate is straight, which is good to see, and everything else for that matter is good and straight. So very high quality loco. Let's take a look at the tender then, which is finished off to the same high standard as the loco. And here's a better look at the running number on the side, which does look excellent. The upper body looks very plain, but the lower chassis looks very detailed because the axle boxes and the springs and such have a lot of definition to them, which is really good. And it also has the vacuum tanks and the brake rigging pre-fitted as well, which gives a real impression of depth and detail to the tender chassis. The front of the tender where it joins the cab is also highly detailed with separately fitted controls. You have the coal load, which looks excellent, very, very nicely detailed coal load, which is also removable. That's good to see. And then around the back, you've got separately fitted lamp brackets, which again are nice and straight. Separately fitted steps on the back, as well as a similarly detailed buffer beam and the kinematic coupling that I've already mentioned, which has a very, very smooth motion on it. So this is a very, very expensive loco. It cost a lot of money, but on the other hand, it also has a lot of features, very high quality, and a noticeable improvement over the D-Class. It is more complex and it is higher quality, I would say. So, in terms of looks, I am very, very pleased with this. In fact, I like it a lot. It's become one of my favourite locos, I would say. But that will only be true if it runs well. The D-Class was a little bit sluggish at times, and it does seem to have gotten worse, if anything, over the last couple of years. So I'm hoping that this loco will be a little bit better. Obviously it's heavier, so it's got a bit more work to do, Let's get it down onto the track, let's see what its performance is like, and let's also take a look at the mechanism. So there it is, the Dapol D1 down onto the track, looking absolutely exquisite. It really is a tremendous loco, this one. I've already filmed its initial performance test and it's fully running, and I will show you that process in just a second. After that though, I disassembled the loco to take a look at the mechanism, and that's what I want to show you now. First, let me show you the process for chipping one of these locos, which, as usual from Dapol, is very, very intuitive indeed. So you use your little spudger tool that was included this time to pry off the smoke box door, which is a tight fit, so you have to be careful. Also, don't destroy the loco's details while you're gripping it to do this. Once it's off though, you can insert the tool into the smoke box hole and then pull out the circuit board, which has the next 18-pin socket on it. I do wish this came with a speaker pre-fitted though. I feel like the loco's too expensive not to have one of those, and surely it could only add pence to the price, and to have to solder a speaker to the circuit board like that is a bit of a faff on a 200 quid loco. Apart from that though, yeah, it's a great system and it works very well. In terms of the actual mechanism, as you can see, the tender has pickups going to the flanges. Slightly odd design that, but does seem to work, so no problems. To see the loco's pickups, we have to remove the base keeper plate, which is held in place by 4 screws. Now that the base is off, you can see that the loco driving wheels have wiper pickups going to them. So you've got 3 on the tender per rail, 2 on the loco, so that's 5 per rail. Not too bad actually, decent number of pickups there. Proper bearings on the driving axles, very high quality feature, glad to see that from Dapol, but just one driven axle, so no over engineering here, nice and simple, works the best. Body removal is largely unnecessary, but I'm doing it to show you. One of the base keeper screws needs to come out for this, and the other screw is located underneath the bogie. Pulling the body out reveals the die-cast chassis. Yeah, it's not a dreadfully chunky, heavy chassis because there's a lot of empty space on this in order to make that DCC fitting solution work. And this is the socket that the circuit board plugs into through the smoke box. This is the 5-pole motor. Yeah, it seems to be the same chassis and motor as on Dapol's D-Class as well. So no flywheel, unfortunately, although that's the only real downside to this mechanism as far as I'm concerned. And then at the back, here are the LEDs which shine upwards into the firebox of the loco to create a nice subtle lighting effect, but it's not so subtle that you can't notice it, so that's good. In terms of the gauging, it's a little bit inconsistent at between 14.2 and 14.4, but that is relatively close to the standard. So overall, this is a great loco. It's accessible, it's serviceable, it's simple to chip, and the quality of the mechanism itself seems to be pretty high with all of the bearings and other quality features. So with that, let's move on and I'll show you how the first performance test went. Okay, moment of truth. This loco is built well and it looks great, but does it run well? Let's find out. Let's give it some juice. Forwards direction, does it actually work? Let's find out. Ooh, it does. And I must say, this has not been running yet, and yet it started very nice and smoothly there, which is great. All right, so good first run. Yeah, that's delightful, isn't it? Really nice. Okay, what's the gearing like? I'll run past you at 50% speed, see what that's like. Yeah, very sensible. Not racing along too quickly, which is good. Although I bet it's got some speed to it if I go full pelt. Let's try that. Well, yeah, it really, really does. All right, that's great. Okay, let's have a look inside the cab. Is the flickering working? Yes, although it's flickering really, really nastily. I actually have to turn it up to 50% before it sort of stops that dodgy flickering and becomes steady. So it's a feature I think that will work better on DCC, where the LEDs can get the full voltage all the time, but it certainly looks okay at the higher speeds on DC. Right, what's the crawl like then? I suspect it's going to be pretty good because we've already seen the loco crawl quite nicely, but let's see how slow it can go. Just going to ease it up gently. Ooh, a bit more, I think. Yeah, that's pretty darn impressive. Large drivers on these, so The fact that they can turn so slowly and move the loco so slowly is very impressive. Yeah, I like that. That looks great. And dreaded question for Dapol. What's the torque like? So let's try. Put my finger in front of the buffer beam and go for 50% speed. Hey. Not bad. Not bad at all. It is at least able to turn its wheels. So performance looks incredible. Really, really pleased with this. It seems to be reliable, smooth. It's been going over points here without cutting out. It's quiet. The lights work. Oh, it's exciting because it's shaping up really, really well. But let's run it in 50% speed around the layout. Let's see how it handles curves. All right, I'm going to look out for any derailments or slowing down. God, look how great it looks. And it did not slow down or derail on the second radius. So this is exciting, very, very exciting. It's a great performer. It looks fantastic. It's a high quality loco and it's performing well. I don't know how it's going to behave under load yet, and the D-Class did struggle quite a bit due to its lightweight and low torque, but this loco is shaping up well because it's not quite so lightweight and the torque does seem okay. So dare I say it, I've got high expectations for this one. I love it. I absolutely love this thing. It's one of my new favourite locos, I think. The livery, the detail, the complexity, the quality, and now the performance all absolutely shine on this thing. So, well done Dapol. I love the D1. I do prefer it, definitely, no question, to the D-Class. I'm going to leave it for 30 minutes forwards, then 30 minutes backwards, and then we'll come back and couple this up to some, I feel like some freight. Just seems right for this, and we'll see how it gets on with that. So, don't go anywhere. I'll see you in just a minute. Okay, that is running in complete, and that went really well. Seems to be plenty of torque in the loco. It's not slowing down around curves, never derailing or stuttering. Very, very good performance. It's a little bit hard to say how it compares against the D-Class on performance because that loco has sort of degraded over the couple of years that I've owned it, and it's now very, very sluggish. This one is certainly not at the moment though. Obviously I've no way of saying how this is going to run in a year or two other than coming back and doing an update, which I will do if anything changes. But for now, the loco is perfect. Really nice and smooth, quiet, reliable, everything you could ask for. Now, the loco is heavier than the D-Class, but it's still quite light. 255 grams, including the tender, makes this a light loco. And with no option to add traction ties if you want to, that means the pulling power is not great. 0.18 newtons or 14 coaches. That's a lot less than quite a few other locos, many of which are much smaller than this. Even the Rapido J70 tram is more powerful. So it's not a powerhouse, you're not going to be able to couple this up to very much, and I'm really going to try and push that with 25 wagons here. They are just open wagons and they're all modern, so they should be nice and freewheeling. I do think this is going to struggle with them though. Anyway, now that this is run in, how is the performance? Let me see if the speed's noticeably changed. Let's run past at 50. Ready? No, still a decent speed, I would say. Yeah, very sensibly geared, to say how large the driving wheels are too. Yeah, that's very good. Torque. Yeah, still plenty of torque on there. Turning its wheels, and it doesn't really seem to be slowing down much either under load like that, which is great. And then finally, what is the crawl like? Let's try this again. It was great before, but is it any better? Let's see. Oh, a bit slower. There we go. I mean, it's pretty impressive, that. That really is very slow and also smooth. Can we go any slower? Yeah, it becomes a bit coggy when you slow it down, but it can go even slower. Yeah, I'm really pleased with this. I mean, it's very expensive, but it seems as though it's hitting high in every single area. Such a gorgeous loco, and at last it's got some performance to match as well. Wow, awesome. Right, so let's go and couple up to the rolling stock and let's do a bit of a haulage test. Dapol stuff used to be an absolute nightmare for coupling. Let's see if that's the case with this loco. Coupling at the right height, has it succeeded? Yeah, looks like two yeses there. Are the couplings at the right height? Yeah, the Rapido coupling there didn't engage, but that's not the Loco's fault. Yeah, spot on at the right height. Great. So, functional couplings. Right, D1 with a freight train, quite a big one. Can it manage it? Nice and steady start. Look at that. Wow. Well, on the straight, yes, it can manage it. But what about around the curves and up the hill? Let's go and see. Well, it's a good start. It's handling the curves without really slowing down. It is slowing down a little bit, but the wheels, the speed of the wheels is not reducing at all. It's just because it's wheel slipping that it's slowing down. And here we go. Again, wheels still doing well, but it has stopped. So not a brilliant hauler, unfortunately. Let me take some of these wagons off and we'll try this again with a slightly smaller load. Okay, so I've stripped 7 wagons off this train. We'll see if that's any better. On the inside line, I'm going to run the D-Class for you, which I've set to the same speed, 50. And in fact, I think I'm going to bring it along for you because it's going so slowly. So yeah, this Loco, completely lame after less than 2 years, which is obviously completely unacceptable at £200. It should last for life. I serviced this not long ago, and when I first started running this today, it was nice and sprightly, but soon it's just returned to being sluggish. So hopefully the D1 won't do the same. The D1 does seem to be performing better than the D-Class was at this point, from memory. It's 2 years ago, but we'll see, we'll see. Oh, there we go, look at that. It's come to life there, blimey. So yeah, motor issues with that. On the inside line, I've got another 440 from the similar sort of era. This is the LSWR T9, here it comes. And I guess the D1 made it this time, because it's made it a lap. So with that, let's go and watch it perform. Well, slight wheel slip there, but it seems to be okay. So yeah, about 20 wagons on a small slope, absolutely fine. So it is more powerful than the D-Class because it's slightly heavier, but it's only more powerful than the D-Class without the D-Class traction tyres fitted. Obviously the D-Class did come with traction tyres, which means that that is still the most powerful Loco if you choose to run it with those tyres. Personally, I hate the traction tyres and I will never run the D-Class with those tyres. But if you're someone who likes the traction tyres, you haven't got that option with the D1. You've got to rely on the 20 grams of extra weight to make this a more powerful hauler. And it's not too bad, you know, this will handle a handful of coaches and, as you can see here, about 20 wagons without any problems whatsoever. But it's still quite a light Loco at £200. A little bit more weight would have been nice. I'm not sure how simple that would have been, but certainly it is quite a light Loco compared with some. But that's really the only issue with this. Other than that, the performance is genuinely tremendous. So many lovely features on this Loco. A lot of character as well. It might not have the grace and the elegance of the D-Class, but there's certainly something about it, and that grey livery really helps to sell whatever that something is. So I'm a huge fan of the D1. Definitely prefer it to the D-Class, and if you're in the market for something like this, I give you the thumbs up. It's a really, really top-notch Loco. Let's do some ratings then for Dapol's brand new Class D1, and as you can see, the ratings here are looking superb. For me, the level of detail is 5-star. It's a very, very complex model, which doesn't rely that much on moulded detail. A lot of the details that you would usually expect to see just moulded, the pipework for instance, is all separately fitted on this model, which is very, very impressive. In addition to that, it has sprung buffers, valve gear between the frames, lights in the cab, an incredibly detailed cab at that, and a very, very good paint job and finish. It doesn't have screw link or chain link couplings provided, which I think is a slight omission, but that's the only thing I can fault, and I don't think it's enough to drag the score down. Similarly, the performance is 5-star for me. The crawl is superb, it's very quiet, very smooth, and the torque is good. The pulling power is not great because of the weight, and we'll get onto that later on, but the torque is okay. The Loco is not slowing down noticeably, so I can't fault the performance. Well done, Dapol, 5-star. The power is not great, 0.18 newtons or 14 coaches on straight and level track. That's less than a Rapido J70, less than a Hornby H-Class even, and less than a Hornby D16, which is a 440, just like this one, but much more powerful. yeah, the lack of traction tyres overall I think is a good thing, but it does mean that you don't have the option to improve your loco's pulling power if you want to, something that the D-Class offered that this one doesn't. The mechanism I've given 4.5. Overall it's a great mechanism, very easy to service and access for DCC fitting, proper bearings on the axles, lots of pickups on both the loco and the tender, 5-pole motor as well. But it doesn't have a flywheel, and I do tend to knock locos down when they don't have that, so it loses half a mark for that. The quality similarly is really good. I love the die-cast body on the loco. It is mostly die-cast that. The build quality is also very high indeed, although some of the details such as the whistle and the various valves, they do look a little bit plasticky up close, and of course there was that issue with one of the handrails which really wasn't very well produced, so I have had to knock it off 1 star for that. Value for money then, at £199.95, this is very expensive, and there are larger and more complex locos out there, even from Dapol, that cost less than this. So you are really paying a premium here. However, compared with the D-Class, you do get more for your money here with the D1. I think it's a higher quality model. It does run better. That could just be due to chance, but going by my examples, the D1 is the better runner. And it's slightly cheaper. I do think as a Rails exclusive, as usual, this is overpriced. However, the price hasn't been increased since the D-Class, which I think is really good to see. So I've given it 3 star. Yeah, it is expensive for what it is, but it is better value than the D-Class. I do want to recognise that. Overall then, that is 8.12 out of 10, or a grade of B. If this had have been priced more reasonably, this would have been an A grade model, because it really is tremendous. Very impressed with it. Into the logbook it goes then, and it is 6th place above the Dapol Class 59 and below the Hornby K1. Very close to the top 5 there, and it would have been easily in there had it been priced more reasonably, but by no means is this a rip-off, and if it's something you fancy, I can highly recommend going for it. Well folks, that will just about do it for this review of the new Dapol D1 class. Very lovely loco. Please let me know what you think about it down in the comment section. Have you picked one of these up? Which livery did you go for, if so, and which one is your favourite? I studied them all very carefully. There are some tempting options, I have to say, but for me, the grey was the easy choice, and I have to say I do not regret it. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Love a grey loco, and this is one of the finest examples I have. So well done Dapol, check them out if you want to, exclusive at Rails, very expensive but a very impressive loco too. Thank you so much for watching, I'll catch you next time. Cheers everybody, you take care.